far and wide he looked, he had yet to find her. He didn't even know her name. Hell, he barely remembered her face. No matter how hard he tried to recall details of her, he came up empty. And the harder he tried, the more what little he did recall faded. Vaughn shook his head as he dropped his chin to his chest. He could remember every detail of her body. He knew her sighs, her soft moans of pleasure. He knew the smell of her skin, the feel of her against him. It was the other details he couldn't recollect that made him want to bellow to the heavens in frustration. That night, so long ago, had been clear and sultry. Something had drawn him out. The full moon hung large and low in the sky as billions of stars watched from above, and the magic had been heavy and intoxicating. He had left Dragon with no particular destination in mind, flying for miles until he spotted the fires. He'd landed unseen, far from the village, and walked there in his human form. The Celtic tribes' cheers had been boisterous and infectious. They danced and celebrated their victory against an enemy around huge fires with flames that attempted to reach the moon. They welcomed him, shoving a horn of mead into his hand. Vaughn had always had a particular interest in the Celts. They were attuned to the earth in a way that others weren't. He'd been content to watch them despite their attempts to get him to join them. Vaughn had moved away from the group and leaned against an ancient gnarled oak with limbs that twisted and reached outward. He watched the festivities with a smile, content to witness the celebration. The mead was particularly good. Or perhaps it was the magic in the air. The British Isles thrummed with magic. It was why the Dragon Kings had made their home in Scotland, where the heart of the planet's magic sprang forth. Dragon Kings were especially in tune with magic in all beings and creatures. Many times mortals had no idea that magic was there, sometimes even changing events. That was because the humans couldn't feel it. But Vaughn did. It was thick, hanging heavily in the air like an invisible mist. Even if he had wanted to walk away, he wouldn't have been able to. Then he'd seen her across one of the great fires. She had stood staring at him. He'd immediately felt her pull, the attraction instant and irresistible. That's when he realized that she was the reason he had been drawn from Dragon. The firelight gave her blonde locks a red-orange tint. They said nothing as they started toward each other in unison, weaving through others and around the fires, until they were face to face. For the first time in his life, he couldn't find words. He didn't know what to say, and yet there was so much he wanted to say to her. She took his hand and, with a smile, led him to a cottage. The red-orange glow from a fire in the hearth coated the inside of the home. She faced him, and before he could speak, her mouth was on his. Everything he'd ever felt, ever would feel, had been in her kiss. The emotions had been crushing and exhilarating at first, but it didn't take long for them to consume him, just as his desire did. He forgot about hiding who he was from the mortals, forgot about not showing his magic in front of them, because he had needed to feel her skin against his. Without hesitation, he used magic to remove their clothes. Vaughn had no idea how many times they shared their bodies that night. Passion had never overtaken him in such a way before. Not before then, and not since. It wasn't until the sun woke him and he found himself alone in the bed that he realized he didn't know her name. He hadn't been too worried at first. He'd assumed the cottage was hers. But as the hours passed and she didn't return, he decided to look for her. No one in the village knew of who he spoke. Worry crept in, but he didn't give up. He spent over a week with the tribe, hoping to see her again. With each day that passed without her, Vaughn began to wonder if she had been real at all. He returned to Dragon and tried to forget that night, and her, but it was impossible. That's when his search began. He'd looked far and wide, combing through the